Adventure Talk Radio. You're in to all things music.
Welcome to the Changing Stage, music gear talk from the manufacturers and musicians who define the biz. Here's your host, Florentino Buenaventura.
How the mighty fell. It was easy to be curious, a trickle then a flow. And once that faucet opened, there was so much more to know. A whisper of a happening, or a rumor in the air. It was easy to be swept away, and swept away we were. The primal whine of Sid's guitar, an ear-splitting howl.
All right, that is the awesome sounds of our guest, Iain Matthews, and that's a little when Floyd were on the prowl. And I definitely remember those times when Pink Floyd was making that music. Welcome in to the Changing Stage show. How are you doing, sir?
Thank you. I'm doing good. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, hey, you're doing all right for coming off of a tour here, and we're going to be talking about all things Iain Matthews, the tour, past, present, and future, and all the fun things. So let's kind of get that started off here. Tell me a little bit about this tour that you've been doing, and where's your next date and where you headed to after that?
Yeah, I hooked up with a songwriter a couple of years ago, Steve Postel. We met at a music convention, and I casually asked him if he wanted to sit in on a couple of tunes, and it sounded great. And we talked, and then I came over to do a solo tour to the West Coast, and I asked Steve if he would accompany me on the tour. And before I knew it, we were talking about doing some things together, doing his songs and my songs, and this is the second trip that I've made where we're approaching it that way, and we've started writing together with an album in mind, and we're almost at the end of this trip. We only have a couple more dates. We're playing in Altadena this evening. We're playing a place called Backstage at the Coffee Gallery. I guess it's an established folk venue in the Los Angeles area, and making plans for the future, basically. Yeah. More tracks, more
tours, and all that fun stuff here. Well, let's kind of go back a little bit here. You come to us from the UK. You got started early on during the British invasion. Tell us about your history, how you got started in this crazy business, and some of the fun things that came along the way.
Yeah, I moved to London in I was born in the north of England, and I moved to London in the mid '60s, and immediately got a job working in Carnaby Street selling shoes. And it was all part of my master plan. I figured if I worked in Carnaby Street, then that's where all the musos would be. They would come down to Carnaby Street to buy their clothes and their shoes. And sure enough, that happened. And I got involved in a band early on, 1966, a band called The Pyramid. And that was kind of my launching pad. I didn't sell shoes for too long.
Well, that's good. You know, we would have lost out on a lot of good music here. So what was it like for you back in those in that time? Were you hanging out a lot with the guys in Zeppelin, and were you hanging out with the folks in Floyd? That's why you wrote this track. How did that how was that time for you?
Yeah, well, I'm not really much of a hanger. You know, I do it for the music rather more than the hang, and even when I would sit with other musicians, it would be more kind of in a kind of a folk rock area than a hard rock thing. Of course, we'd end up playing shows with all these people. It was the late '60s, and it was kind of a mix and match period. And by '67, I was in a band called the Fairport Convention, and we worked all the time. You never knew who you were going to end up playing with. A lot of the shows were at universities in England and colleges, and you'd get there to find out that there were 3 acts on the bill, and it could have been Fleetwood Mac, it could be Yes, it could have been anybody really, Joe Cocker. You just never knew who you were going to be on a show with, and it was a fun time. I was going to say, did you when you seeing these artists coming up at their time, and you were looking at all their talents, did you think, hey, that particular group is going to be a big hit, or they were kind of a surprise for me that they actually came out the box at that level? Yeah, there were some acts that you knew were going to take off. When I first did a show with Genesis, with the original Genesis, with Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins, I mean, it was obvious from the get-go that Peter Gabriel was going to be doing something special. Not so much Phil Collins, because he was pretty much just a drummer in those days.
Right, yeah.
But, bands like Fleetwood Mac, the original Fleetwood Mac with Peter Green and Jeremy Spencer, it was obvious they were going to go places.
Wow.
It wasn't difficult to spot.
Yeah, definitely. And you were busy making music, and were you gravitating to a certain flavor at that time? Obviously, you've done a few different types of styles, and you've kind of come up with this sound that is uniquely Iain Matthews. How did you start off, and where do you feel the sound's at now?
Well, I didn't even think in career terms in the beginning, especially with Fairport. I think we were all just doing it for the crack and trying to figure out, what was going on and what kind of musical abilities we all had. And it wasn't until after I left Fairport and started Matthews Southern Comfort that I thought, hey, this could take me somewhere. I think I might like to be a songwriter and lead my own band. But up to that point, I didn't really think in career terms. We were just kind of floating and taking each day as it came and trying our best to be as good as we could possibly be. But I soon realized what kind of music I liked. It was while I was in Fairport, there was the kind of emerging singer-songwriter thing happening in the USA, and of course all that music drifted over to the UK, and I began to pick out certain songwriters that I liked and certain styles of music that I liked, and then something began to formulate in my head as to what I might be and what I might be able to do.
Yeah, so did you find, like a lot of the players back then, that the blues guys were really influencing you, or were you finding that it was actually the Bob Dylans of the world, the Joan Baez's that were over here doing stuff?
Well, I, to be honest, I didn't pay a lot of attention to the players per se. I was more into the song. there were some players that were impossible to ignore. The Peter Greens and the Hendrixes, and, Alvin Lee and people like that. But I was more into the song, so I gravitated more towards the songwriters than the players.
Yeah, you can definitely hear it in your craft as well that you're 100% about the song.
Yeah, I mean, my first impressions of songwriters were people like Tim Hardin and Joni, of course, and Leonard Cohen and Richard Farina, people like that.
Yeah.
They made a big impression on me.
Yeah, they're definitely masters of the craft for sure. And that led you over here to start doing shows, and like you've been on tour recently. What was your first show like here in the States, and what did you think about these crazy Americans?
Well, the first show I ever did in the U.S. was back in 1971. I'd made an album. I'd made my very first solo album. It's called "If You Saw Through My Eyes," and I came over to do the obligatory tour, and my first ever show was in a community center in Wheaton, Maryland. real glamorous stuff,
Hey, we all get that start, but it's kind of a different day and age now. So I mean, it's always interesting to hear where people broke in and how it turned out.
Yeah, it's very different. I mean, that was a warm-up date. On that tour, I ended up, back in the early 70s, they had residencies in the acoustic clubs, and I ended up doing a week in New York at a place called the Bitter End with Dion.
Oh yeah.
And
was Dion by himself, or was he still with the Belmonts at that time? I guess it would have been Andy.
He was playing solo. He's playing solo.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And I ended up on the West Coast. I ended up in L.A. doing a week at the Troubadour with Randy Newman. So
okay.
we did some nice shows.
So you've seen a lot of history here. Let's talk a little bit about your history. What were some of the memories that you're like, wow, I can't believe I got a chance to do that, or in converse, wow, I can't believe I had to do that.
Yeah, my God, this.
I know it's a big
so
career.
yeah, it's a big career. I've had a couple of hits along the way, and both of those hits enabled me to play the more high profile shows. I got to do a string of dates in the late 70s with the Beach Boys. That was something special.
Oh, that would have been
playing with those guys. Yeah, sometimes Brian was there, sometimes he wasn't, but
sometimes when Brian was there, he still wasn't there. He was definitely. So I definitely understand.
He was a sweet, paranoid man. I liked him.
Yeah. I've never met him, but I know his daughter Carney, and I know a lot of his players that have played with him along the way, and he's just brilliant. But sometimes with genius, comes a little bit of social absenteeism. So it just kind of comes with the. I actually saw him. About this time last year, he came over to England, and Fairport Convention have an annual festival of their own. Oh, awesome!
And it's been going for about 40 years now, and it's grown to a full 3-day weekend where they get 25,000 people a day. So it's a pretty big festival.
Wow!
And they had Brian over to headline the Friday night, and I tried to jog his memory about me doing some of the Beach Boys dates back in the late 70s, but no, he didn't remember. I'm sure he's had zillions of opening acts, and I tried to remind him about stuff, but he didn't really remember it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Like I said, I know some folks. I wouldn't take it to heart for sure. Like you probably haven't. So
No, I don't.
I as I went through your, obviously I've heard your tracks before, but there was one track I didn't hear until today, and I'm a huge fan of that track since you mentioned songs. "When You Were Mine" by Prince. That was I really like your rendition of that. A few folks have done it.
Thank you. Well, how did you find that?
I was going through different tracks and I was going through searching YouTube, and you as a interviewer, you want to know a little bit about your subject more than you've heard through mainstream media. So I ran across that track. I'm like, wow, I did not know you did that track, and that is
that's going pretty deep. I did that recording when I lived in Seattle. I lived in the U.S. for 27 years, so I'm not unfamiliar with the U.S. And for 10 of those years, I lived in Seattle, and I started a band with a man named David Surkamp, who was the leader of a band called Pavlov's Dog from St. Louis.
Okay, yeah.
And David had moved to Seattle the same time as me, and we ended up having the same manager. And so we bumped into each other a lot, and we got to hang out quite a bit. And at one point, we were both at loose ends, and we talked about possibly starting a band. It was a most unusual pairing, but we talked about forming a band, and before I knew it, we'd done it. We put a band together, and we had this group called Hi-Fi for a couple of years, and the track that you're talking about was on. We made 2 albums, and the track you're talking about was on our second album. Yeah, and wow, I'm surprised you found that. That's amazing.
Yeah,
not many people know that I did a Prince song.
What made you choose that song?
I just liked it. I've been a big Prince fan for a long time, and the first time I heard that song, I thought, wow, we could really adapt that to suit what we're doing. And, we used to play it live, and it was always went down well live. So when it became time to make the record, we decided to include it in the record too.
Well, hey, since we mentioned it, might as well play a little bit of the track so people can hear it here.
Okay.
It's like I said, I found it right there on YouTube, and it was pretty awesome. Here we go. So awesome, man. I love it.
Yeah, I can't sing that high anymore, I'm afraid.
Well, there's always vice grips, man. You can just use those. Get that extra high note. Just give a pinch. There you go.
It's up there.
Yeah. Well, it's a testament. You're a man of songs. You heard that song, and that obviously wasn't the big hit on his track on his album Dirty Mind, but you recognize that. You recognize that in your own songs, and you recognize that in others, and that's pretty awesome. Now we've got about 10 minutes left here.
Okay.
Let's kind of talk about today and what's going on today. And I mean, you've been doing this since pretty much rock and roll, started hitting its, full swing ahead in the 60s. What do you feel about today's music business, and how does that affect the way you go out and do your music business yourself?
Yeah. I'm 73 years old now, and I don't mean this in any kind of pitiful way, but I kind of think that the bulk of my career is behind me, and the music business has changed so much. It's always been unless you hit it really big, it's always been about new music, and it's always been about young music, and it's changed for me. It's changed to the point where any kind of promotion pretty much has to be done by the artist. I mean, you have to get out there or get online and self-promote. As you well know, the days of CDs are declining, and there's no real retail outlet anymore. So it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah.
And I'm like everybody else. I put my dates up online, and I send out reminders to people, and I sell most of my music at shows or online or streaming. It's just it's an entirely different ballgame to what it was even 10, 15 years ago when record companies kind of ran the roost, really. Yeah,
they're trying to figure out how to, make their way here in this new media music business. It's pretty amazing, and we get a chance to talk with a lot of folks, and that's pretty much the sentiment a lot of people are looking at, is that it's nice. There's a control over one's own music career, so that part of it's nice, but if you don't have the finances to afford a team to drive it for you, it's pretty daunting and cumbersome to try to get the connection to the audiences. Although all these things are accessible to the artist, the fact that they have to be managed, and they're expected to be managed in the voice of that artist. That's right. It's a challenge.
Yeah. And they're managed on many different levels, I mean, I'm just trying to maintain the level of the profile level that I have at the moment. I don't have any great expectations about finding a new audience or anything like that.
Yeah.
I'm more into trying to hold on to the audience that I have already.
Yeah, I definitely hear you. Well, thanks to people like Lori Reimer, who has connected us. I was really appreciative of Lori to do that.
Right.
And she's out there, really doing a good job, at least for folks in the Southern California area. So big shout and appreciation to her and all that she's doing with the tribe and all those fun folks over there. So
she's a good one. She's a good one.
She definitely is. So, and then we've got your partner in crime coming on here a little bit later on today. Obviously, we're going to be putting this up here shortly. But, kind of with that said, and social media and everything, what can we expect for the future of Iain Matthews?
Well, I live in the Netherlands right now. I've been there for almost 20 years now. And when I moved there, I put a new version of my band Matthews Southern Comfort together, and we've made 3 albums with a 4th one coming out next year, and that's kind of been my main focus for the last 4 or 5 years, just playing live with the band and trying to raise its profile. So I'll be focusing some on that. And then I've got the project with Steve that we're putting together, and I don't think either of us really know where it's going to go, but we both believe in it. We both believe in what we're doing, and we have a mutual respect for each other. And like I said, we've begun writing together, and that's going pretty well. And it's just kind of one day at a time and see where it goes, really.
That's awesome. Now we got about 2.5 minutes left. What was been your favorite date so far on this tour? I know you're going to call, put you on the spot there, because somebody's going to. What about our date? But what was your favorite date? Yeah. And what was that? What made it special?
Favorite date? My God. Well, we actually played. We played a. I don't really have a favorite date that I've played on this trip so far, but we played a show yesterday for an organization called Wild Honey.
Okay.
And there were 2 acts on played on it. It was a daytime show. It was outdoors, and in the first act had a pedal steel player, a guy called Dave Perlman, working with them. And it's been a long time since I worked with a pedal steel player. And Steve knew him, and we got him up there to play on a couple of songs with us. And one of the songs that I still do by request is the Joni Mitchell song "Woodstock."
Yeah.
Because that was my big hit. That was my biggest hit. And we got Dave up to play pedal steel on Woodstock, and I haven't done a version of that song with a pedal steel player on it since 1970. So that was pretty special.
Wow, true artist. It's all about the music, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
That is
always
very
will
cool.
be.
And
when I stop loving the music, that's when I stop loving what I'm doing.
Yeah, well, I think that's a testament. You've been playing since the '60s. A lot of those cats just didn't want to do it anymore, man. A lot of people have kind of, went to figure out to do their own thing. I was fortunate to interview Pete Best, and Pete was doing construction work for a long while until he kind of got back into the music thing. So it definitely is, it's a testament to being able to do music.
It's a tenuous lifestyle, there's not many guarantees in what we do. You have to really love it to do it for as long as I have. Yeah,
definitely, for sure. Well, we've got 1 minute left. Share with us kind of a parting thought. What would you like people to know about the music, about you, in 1 minute?
Well, that like I said, the reasons I do it are because I love the music. I still feel that I have a lot of music and creative energy inside of me, and if you're curious at all about what I've been doing for the last 50 years, no, let's narrow that down. So let's say the last 10 years. There's a lot of my music online. There's a lot being streamed, and there's a lot of stuff on YouTube that you can check out. And
like When You Were Mine, you can find that one.
I've been I've been trying different things over the last few years, and some of it works, some of it not quite as well. But I think if you check it out and listen to it, you'll see that I'm still kind of reaching for something. I'm not quite sure what it is, but
well, thanks, Ian. The music came in, it's kicking in. We'll have links to Ian on the post page, so make sure you check him out. Stay tuned.